Hello and welcome. It's Thursday, the 15th of May. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The eldest son of the de facto owner of the sunken Sewol ferry has been put on the most wanted list. Lawmakers slam the government for its poor response to the disaster. The death toll from the mining accident in Turkey tops 270 and looks sure to rise even further. As rescue efforts continue, the Turkish government is facing protests over its failure to improve mine safety. Plus, a jury in the United States orders Hyundai Motor to pay $240 million in punitive damages after finding that a manufacturing defect caused a deadly car accident. We begin with the latest on the Sewol ferry disaster. 5 more bodies were recovered Wednesday, leaving 23 people still unaccounted for almost 1 month after the ferry capsized, as well as the search operations off Jindo Island. The search goes on for those deemed most responsible for the tragedy. State auditors are also scrutinizing the government and Coast Guard response to the sinking. Kwon So-ah starts us off.
There was a mistake with the numbers. The rescue operation is being carried out simultaneously by private and public authorities, so we are prone to making mistakes.
The way authorities have handled the Sewol ferry disaster from the moment the boat started to experience problems has been the subject of harsh criticism. Nearly a month after that fateful day, state auditors have begun a special investigation into whether the government neglected its duties. The Board of Audit and Inspection has deployed a 50-person team to inspect the ministries and agencies responsible for the disaster response. These include the Ministries of Oceans and Fisheries, the Coast Guard, as well as shipping associations related to the sunken ferry. Auditors will focus on whether the government's response was appropriate and if rescue operations progress strategically. The construction, management, and operational procedures of passenger ships will also be scrutinized. Further on, the audit team will look into how the government is supervising safety measures. Meanwhile, prosecutors are looking into putting more pressure on Yoo Dae-gyun, the first son of the practical owner of the Sewol ferry, Yoo Byung-on. They put him on their Class A most wanted list on Wednesday, 1 day after raiding his house, which means he will be arrested on the spot once he is found. There are concerns he may attempt to flee the country if he already hasn't. Prosecutors have summoned his father, Yoo Byung-on, for questioning on Friday, and they say they expect him to appear. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And the joint team of prosecutors and police that arrested the ferry's captain, Lee Jun-sok, and 14 other crew members on charges of negligence of duty will indict all of them on this Thursday. It remains to be seen whether the crew, including the captain, will be charged with homicide out of willful negligence. And the nation's lawmakers are also looking into holding the government accountable for its poor response to the ferry disaster. For the first time since the sinking, lawmakers had the opportunity to grill and lambast government officials on Wednesday. Choi Yu-son reports.
Lawmakers from both the ruling and opposition camps lobbed criticism at officials during a government report, saying their mismanagement of the accident led to its disastrous outcome. Jin Sun-mi of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy revealed details of a phone conversation between emergency operators and the Coast Guard in the early moments of the crisis. In it, the head of the emergency operator repeatedly asked the Coast Guard to bring the rescue to an area where high-level officials were standing by instead of an island closer to the accident site.
It's clear their priority was not rescuing the missing passengers, but showing high-level officials those who were already rescued.
In response to the accusations, the National Emergency Management Agency, in a written statement, said the request to send survivors elsewhere was made to speed up the medical treatment. Influential figures within the ruling Saenuri Party were also highly critical of the government. Accusing the government of being corrupt and lax, lawmaker Lee Jae-oh asked why it took officials an hour to first report the accident to the president. Lawmakers Heo Chung-won said Security Minister Kang Byung-gyu lacks crisis management abilities and should step down immediately.
This incident has put the nation in great shock and despair. To prevent a repeat of such an incident, we need to introduce a new law. No one in Korea will trust preventive measures put forth by public officials like you.
Seo added he would introduce a bill this week that calls for a probe into the causes of the ferry disaster, compensation for the victims and their families, punishment of those found responsible, and a reform plan to bolster national emergency response. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, senior diplomats from Korea and Japan will begin a second round of talks today on Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul's foreign ministry says it will focus on proving the so-called comfort women were forced into sexual servitude and were not, as some in Japan claim, working as prostitutes. Not much progress was made at their first meeting in Seoul last month. The Korean government intends to use letters released by the Chinese government in March that prove the women were forced to work in Japanese military brothels. More than 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve Japanese troops in the early 20th century. Tokyo claims the issue was settled through a 1965 treaty when the two countries normalized their diplomatic ties. There are also some concerns Japan might want to focus more on other issues during these talks, like Korea's import restrictions on Japanese fisheries or Tokyo's moves to boost its military presence. Washington's top negotiator on North Korean affairs says the US government is in close contact with Beijing when dealing with North Korea issues. Speaking at the Center for Strategic and International Policy in Washington this week, Glyn Davies said North Korea is always one of the main topics of conversation during his talks with Chinese officials. He added Beijing is well prepared for a possible provocation by North Korea and has plans of its own to firmly deal with a variety of emergency scenarios on the Korean peninsula. Now back here in South Korea, and there is just under 3 weeks to go before Koreans head to the polls to pick the men and women they want to represent them at the local level. Election day is June 4th, but there is still plenty that needs to be done between now and then. Myung-kil reports.
Just 3 weeks remain before the local elections, but the political atmosphere is fairly toned down this year due to unfortunate tragedies that have shaken Korea in recent weeks. All candidates start their registrations on Thursday and Friday. Election campaigns will officially kick off next Thursday, which is the 22nd. And for the first time in Korea's local election history, people will be able to cast early votes on May 30th and the 31st, before the actual voting day on June 4th. The ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy are each fronting 17 candidates for metropolitan and provincial posts. The mayoral race for Seoul, Incheon, and Gwangju City and the governor's seat for Gyeonggi-do Province will be closely watched. Political analysts say the metropolitan areas are important as it holds half of Korea's total population, and its seats are seen as a leeway to the presidential ticket.
Korea's Gyeongsang-do and Jeollado provinces are strong footholds for the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition party. However, the metropolitan areas of Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do Province are free from political regionalism. They can sway the outcome of votes, as the regions make up half of Korea's population. The seats are seen as a ticket to the presidential elections.
After rival parties complete their candidate registration this week, they're expected to begin full-fledged campaigns and draft strategies to woo voters. The outcome of the nationwide election will be regarded as a major test for President Park Geun-hye's administration, which entered its second year in February. We will have to wait for the results on election day to see which political party earns the trust of the people to institute change. Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
Now, a jury in the United States has ordered Korean auto giant Hyundai Motor to pay damages well in excess of $200 million after finding that a defect in one of its cars caused a head-on smash that killed 2 teenagers in 2011. Connie Kim reports.
A U.S. court has ordered Hyundai Motor to pay a staggering $248 million in punitive damages after finding a manufacturing defect in a Hyundai vehicle caused a deadly car accident 3 years ago. A state court jury in Polson, Montana has also ordered that within the total, Hyundai pay $8.6 million in damages to the families of the 2 teenagers that died in the crash. It was on July 2, 2011 when the Hyundai Tiburon the teenagers were traveling in crashed head-on into another car. The court ruled a defective steering knuckle caused the car to suddenly veer into an oncoming lane. The state of Montana's cap on such damages stands at $10 million, but the district court says that it's not enough to deter future wrongdoings by super wealthy multinational firms. In 2005, Hyundai Motors was forced to recall 111 Tiburons manufactured over a 1-month period in that year due to steering issues, but it's unclear if the passengers were driving the recalled automobile. Hyundai Motor has called the damage award outrageous and says it will appeal. It argues a firecracker set off in the vehicle caused the crash. Eyewitnesses say they saw a firework explode in the car prior to the accident, but a police officer testified that he found no evidence that any fireworks had been set off in the car. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And another bad day for another one of the country's biggest firms, because a U.S. court has thrown out an appeal by Samsung Electronics to revise a patent ruling that was handed down in Apple's favor. The United States Court of Appeal said Wednesday that it agreed with the US-based International Trade Commission's ruling last June, which said Apple did not infringe on 3 of Samsung's patents. The court did not elaborate on its reasoning. The ITC had ruled that Apple infringed on 1 of Samsung's patents, which was not ruled upon on Wednesday. Apple devices with the technology were subject to import bans, but this was overturned by the White House last August. The Obama administration claimed the technology was covered by the so-called Standard Essential patent, which ensures devices made by different companies can communicate with each other. Now, time for a look through our international headlines. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Eunice, the death toll from the Turkey mining accident has skyrocketed over the past 24 hours, so much so that it's on track to be the deadliest in the country's history.
That's right, Mark. Turkey is no stranger to mining accidents, unfortunately, but this one is really bringing the people's anger to the surface as more than 270 are confirmed to have died. That anger is being aimed squarely at the government. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The death toll from the mining accident in Turkey has topped 270 and looks sure to rise even further. As rescue efforts continue, the Turkish government is facing nationwide protests over its failure to improve mine safety. There are reports of clashes near the accident site in Soma, as well as in Istanbul and Ankara. According to the mine operator, nearly 450 workers have been rescued. The government says otherwise, however, putting the number of rescued at some 360. Officials say about 120 workers remain trapped in the mine some 2 kilometers underground. Fresh air is continuously being pumped into the shattered mine to give those trapped the best chance to get out with their lives. All power has been cut to the mine system of service cages as an electrical spark triggered the explosion. What started out as a massive rescue operation has steadily turned into a recovery of the dead, though, as no survivors have surfaced since early Wednesday. Many Turks are furious with Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government for privatizing the nation's mines and ignoring countless safety warnings. The disaster has outraged the public to a point that Turkey's major trade unions have announced a one-day strike in protest. Prime Minister Erdogan said Wednesday that Turkey was experiencing a very great pain over the accident, but stressed that similar explosions occur in mines around the world. This disaster is shaping up to be the worst mining accident in Turkey since 1992, when 263 people were killed in a gas explosion. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan says there will be no swap deal with Boko Haram, the Islamist militant group that kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls from their Chibok boarding school. This according to visiting British Minister for Africa Mark Simmons, who met with Jonathan Wednesday. He said Nigeria's president made it very clear there will be no negotiations involving detained Boko Haram militants, but that dialogue should continue to reach a solution that brings stability to northern Nigeria. Previously, the Nigerian cabinet minister had said Abuja was willing to talk with Boko Haram without specifying whether that might include an exchange for the abducted girls. The World Health Organization has concluded the spread of the potentially lethal Middle East respiratory syndrome is of serious concern but does not constitute a global health emergency at this point. Also known as MERS, the virus causes coughing, fever, shortness of breath, and could lead to respiratory or organ failure. The WHO, who says there's no evidence of human-to-human transmission, though contact with camels in the spring could have contributed to the surge in new cases. The virus has been confirmed in more than 500 patients, most of them in Saudi Arabia, and a handful of cases from Asia, Europe, and the United States. 171 people are known to have died from the syndrome. And finally, the who's who of the film industry have descended upon the French Riviera to attend the 67th Cannes Film Festival. A curated selection of 18 films will be screened for the top prize, the Palme d'Or. Opening the prestigious festival was Grace of Monaco, directed by Olivier Dahan and starring Nicole Kidman as the European princess, Grace Kelly. The festival runs for 11 days.
That a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. It's Teachers' Day here in Korea as a day for students to show their respect and gratitude to their teachers, but the day won't be celebrated in quite the same way this year, as our Song Ji-son tells us.
They serve as our instructors, confidants, and counselors, and are in some cases as important as a parent, because a good teacher can change our lives. In honor of them, over 100 countries celebrate Teachers' Day. About a fifth of them do so on World Teachers' Day on October 5th. But here in Korea, it's celebrated on May 15th, the birthday of King Sejong, who invented the Korean alphabet. Teachers' Day was started over 5 decades ago by young members of Korea's Red Cross who volunteered to visit their teachers who are retired or had fallen ill. More than 50 years later, students today give carnations to their teachers in the same way they give them to their parents 1 week earlier. It's a less than subtle nod to the importance of the teachers and the roles they play.
The ways of celebrating Teachers' Day have evolved over the years. Students sometimes wash their teachers' feet, cook them food, and bring the food to their teachers' homes.
But this year's Teachers' Day will not be celebrated like the years gone by. There'll be no celebratory events as a mark of respect to the victims of Sewol ferry disaster. For the first time, all commemorative events have been canceled, and the week has been designated as a week for mourning. In light of the disaster, the Education Ministry has banned mass school field trips until at least June, and the teachers are calling for proactive steps to ensure the safety of students nationwide.
We urge the government to step up safety training for the students and also to better train the teachers so they are all capable of handling emergency situations.
Some schools have scheduled special safety sessions for students on this Teachers' Day, while others have organized visits to a memorial altar in Ansan that has been set up for the ferry disaster victims. 송지선, ARIRANG News.
And good morning, everyone. As we start things off with the biggest news on Wednesday, as Park Ji-sung held a press conference at the Park Ji-sung Football Center in Suwon. And while there were speculations, little did we know that he was ready to say goodbye to the sport. Now, with his parents and fiancée on hand, Park Ji-sung stated that he had played his last match as a professional football player and will now retire from the sport. He added that his ongoing knee pain is the reason for his retirement and that he had already made his decision back in February. Now, Park, who led the South Korean national team to a fourth-place finish back in 2002, has long been touted as one of the best Asian footballers of all time. And moving on, due to Park Ji-sung's press conference, this press conference didn't get as much attention, but nonetheless, many wanted to know what badminton stars Lee Young-dae and Kim Ki-jung had to say about their return. Now, with the press conference taking place at the Taeneung National Training Center, they talked about how they felt during their suspension and stated that they didn't know how they're going to spend the year without competition. But they added that the fans around the nation gave them continued support and was about to continue their condition training throughout the entire time. Meanwhile, they're also set to compete in their first competition of the season in New Delhi. And now moving over to the second leg of the round of 16 AFC Champions League matchup between FC Seoul and Kawasaki, with FC Seoul up 3-2 in aggregate. And despite taking the lead in the first half, they lost 2-1 at home. But thanks to those 3 away goals from the first leg, FC Seoul advances to the round of 8. And now with that, moving over to some Wednesday night's KBO action, the Samsung Lions were able to crush the Hanwha Eagles 10-3, with the LG Twins hanging on to beat the Lotte Giants once again 2-1, and the Tucson Bears offense comes alive once again to beat the SK Wyverns 12-2. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Kia Tigers take on the NC Dinos. Of course, going into the game here, first inning of the game, Brett Pill sends this one to right. A sac fly gives the Kia Tigers the early 1-0 lead. But the bottom of the inning with 2 men on, Eric Thames drills this ball to deep right center field. Going, gone, a 3-run shot. And the NC Dinos have the lead 3-1. Fifth inning this time, we go over to Kim Joo-hyung at bat. This one, an RBI single to right, cuts the deficit to 3-2. Before this next play here, an infield single to second base by Lee Jong-hwan. This scores another, and we're tied 3-3. Fast forward to the 8th inning, game tied 5-5. Here's Na Sung-bum with 2 men on, and he crushes this pitch to deep right center field. No doubt about it, a 3-run shot, as the NC Dinos would hang on to win this game 9-5. And now finishing things off and staying in baseball, but over in the majors, where last year's National League Rookie of the Year, Jose Fernandez of the Miami Marlins, will be out for the rest of the season due to Tommy John surgery. Now, according to the team official, the Miami Marlins ace has a significant tear in his right elbow, and the team doctor recommended that he has the season-ending Tommy John surgery. Meanwhile, ligament tears in the elbow is becoming a huge problem in the major leagues, as many young pitchers are going through the Tommy John surgery. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
The weak trough of low pressure dropped the sudden showers to Seoul and the surrounding area this morning, and on and off rain is expected in the northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do, with less than 5 millimeters of precipitation. And the sun should come out from behind the clouds as the day progresses, and the warmth in the air will continue for the southern provinces, with highs hovering mid to upper 20s, while the capital area will notice cooler daytime daytime highs today. But temperatures should rebound nicely to the mid-20s again tomorrow, and warm and sunny weather is ahead of us for a while. Now, over in Jeondo, winds and waves will remain calm, but the currents in the water will get stronger as the spring tides starts from today. With that in mind, here are the readings for the day. The low in Seoul is starting out at 13, but the high will rise to 23, while Daegu peak at 27, and Gwangju and Busan both should climb to 25. Now, for other regions, down on Jeju and Daejeon will reach 20 and 25. Dokdo should see a high of 22, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 13. Now, that's all for now, but I'll be back with more updates afternoon.
Well, that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.